Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Bruin Leadership Insights webinar. Our topic today is keeping your new members engaged. And thank you all for attending. This webinar will be available for alumni worldwide and focused on our best practices in various aspects of volunteer leadership. We have an hour together conversing with our panel of three leaders from the alumni networks for 40 to 45 minutes, and then answering any questions that you may have that are posed by you via the chat function. This webinar will be available for viewing via the UCLA Alumni YouTube channel. And this panel is intended to discuss their experiences retaining new members, discussing the challenges that they've faced, possible strategies and successes in keeping their new members coming back. So regardless of whether or not your network is a dues-paying network or not, invitation only or open, regional, cultural, special interest-based, retaining your new members is a universal and important theme. I'll introduce myself, and then we'll go ahead and introduce the panel. My name is Todd Sargent. I am the treasurer of the UCLA Alumni Association Board of Directors, as well as president of the Order of the Golden Bruin here at UCLA. I'm very happy to be moderating this panel, and we've got a great group of panelists. So we'll go ahead, have them introduce themselves and talk a little bit about their network, what their role is within the organization, and what the mission of that network is. Let's start with Jane Permal. Jane?
Hi, I am the immediate past president of Gold Shield Alumna, and we are probably one of the oldest network among the Alumni Association. And our major goal is to raise money for Gold Shield scholars and alumni scholars.
Jane, how many members do you have?
We have actively probably 95 to 100, and we have about 20 who are 80 years or older who are not as active.
Thanks, Jane. Nishan, how about you? I think you may be on mute, Nishan.
Apologize about that. UCLA, I represent the membership coordinator for the UCLA Black Alumni Association. We're a 50-year-old organization celebrating with about 300 paying members, at least 140 lifetime members who paid a premium price not to pay our annual dues membership. Our goal is to create a space to support students, raise scholarship, and be a voice for African-American alumni at the university as a way to support the students and build our own network. Great.
Thanks, Nishan. How about you, Matt?
Hi, I'm Matt Swadek. I'm the current president of the Washington, D.C. Alumni Network. Our network really just tries to connect Bruins who are so far away from campus way out on the East Coast. So we put on a ton of events throughout the year to kind of get to their interests, like networking nights, volunteer opportunities. We go out to the bars to watch football and basketball games, and we also raise money for a regional scholarship for one student from this area.
Fantastic. Thanks, Matt. What I love about this panel is that they represent all the different facets of alumni network groups, from regional to cultural to affinity groups. And so we're really happy to have you, and let's get started with the questions. First question for the group, and let's start with Nishan. How do you maintain interest and involvement of your new members once you've attracted them to join the organization?
This year, over the last year, we focused on having different free events to encourage new members to come to the Black Alumni Association. Over the last year, we've had 3 premiere movie nights, and the goal was just to encourage new members to get involved with coming to UCLA or the local community that did not cost a dime for the member to go. And that's one thing that we learned from talking to people, is that they're always concerned about, when it comes down to supporting UCLA or alumni associations, always asking for $1. So we focused on having free events. And this year we also hosted a alumni USC tailgate at USC, which attracted over about 150 people. And we were able to work with several organizations that are housed at UCLA, as well as the USC, similar organization at USC, to be able to support our efforts. So the goal was just to find different ways to get people involved that did not focus on charging them $1.
Did you and the team come up with different types of programs to meet different types of new members, or did you approach things sort of generally for your new members?
So I believe it was a culmination of different things that encouraged people. I also forgot to mention that during the summertime last year, there were people that were interested in fitness, as well as we had a board member that was also a former athlete. So they decided to do a walking club. So they just came to campus to walk over a couple of months. So it targets different facets of life. And then we also had a book club where we just have different places for people to actually get involved, for people that like to read and come to the university to talk about it. And hopefully we continue on doing that, because this year we also were able to read books that were published by UCLA faculty members. So the goal to build that bridge between the alumni and the faculty. So it was a goal of like everyone's interest on the board. So I like sports, so I was in charge of the tailgates with another member of our sports thing. And then there's other people that wanted to do the walking, and they got involved with the walking. So it's kind of being a place for everyone. If you have an idea, we'll see if we can work it out to help out.
That's great. That's a lot of diversity of activity. Matt, I know in DC that the network has an alumni sports league. Can you talk a little bit about that and how it engages new members?
Sure. So about 4 or 5 years ago now, we joined the Capital Alumni Network, which is it has a series of leagues that encourage you to play with your university. And so we started with a basketball team, and then it has since grown to now we have softball, flag football, volleyball, and in soccer, and so really it's a great way to kind of get people out that maybe sports is their thing and they're not really into going out and networking or whatever, and so it gives them another outlet, another option for connecting with Bruins. And so we go out there and we compete against other alumni schools and alumni teams. It's a great way to get them kind of connected to some of our other events, and then we also can get them to kind of join our board as well. So,
what are some of the other events that your new members tend to participate in?
We get a lot of people that come out to once football season rolls around, we'll get a lot of people out for that. So they really enjoy coming out to the bar and looking for a place to watch the game, right? And so that's a great way to kind of get new members. And we do actually partner with some of the other Pac-12 alumni networks, the other UC networks, and together we put on some great networking events, some great kind of mentorship events as well with the local UCDC program.
Thanks for sharing. Jane, Gold Shield is just a fantastic tradition within the UCLA community. What does it do uniquely to maintain the interest and involvement of new members?
Well, before just talking about new members, our major concern is to keep all members, new, old, and in between, active and involved. Also, I need to qualify it by saying, even our new members are at least 5 years out of undergraduate school. So they're not as young as you think they are. And most of them are already going into career and moving up the ladder. And I'm sure you know how stressful that could be. On the other hand, we have lots of members who are still very active, who have already retired. So what we try to do is to do a variety of things to help our members to be active. So for example, some of the newer members, they really can't come on campus a whole lot. They are so darn busy. They have family to take care of and so on. So what really they do a lot of is to come to our major events once in a while. But on the other hand, they will help with mentoring our scholars or they will help in keeping up the books, do the membership, do electronic communication, and all of those kinds of activities, rather than just more social oriented kind of things. And they feel like they're contributing, and that way, when they're ready and they have time, then they will obviously join the rest of us. So I think the key here is to know your members and know the kind of lifestyle and the challenges that they are living with every day, and be able to accommodate that and support that.
Jane, it's great that the Gold Shield board has really thought about their members and how to engage them. Why do you think new members may become disengaged or start losing interest in the organization?
Well, I think there are some of them, to be very truthful. Again, I'll go back just one of the criteria that we have to even be invited to join Gold Shield is that one has already served the university in a meaningful way. So every one of them who join has taken on leadership roles and may very well be members of other organizations that whether it's that have been described or others. So when we lose them, it's because they are still active with those and they have taken on leadership roles. And that's good. Then the least they could do is to raise the money and help us with the scholarship funds.
Yeah, that's true. It's a nice problem to have, right? Is when your new members take on other responsibilities or other activities within other networks within the UCLA ecosystem.
Right.
So Nishan, what I've seen over the years is that your organizational members are very committed to the mission and are highly engaged. But I have to assume that sometimes new members do lose a connection or become disengaged. Have you seen that? And what are some of the things that the organization's done to bring back those new members and keep them active?
So one thing that our organization is currently doing is that we think some of the fall off between members is not because we're doing too much, is that we've not had a very good, strong database network to communicate all our upcoming events and activities. So this year we were rolling out with a new membership program where we would be able to have a lot more things automated so members could find out more information. So since there is no full-time staff and we're a volunteer-based organization, we could truly utilize our 3,000 contacts of members that have attended events over the last 5 to 6 years for UCLA Black Alumni Association. So our goal now is to put that information to work so people can find out more information about when their dues need to get paid, when the upcoming event is, and also our goal is to be able to have some thank you events. So one thing we learned from our volunteers is that we oftentimes don't acknowledge our volunteers. So this year, during our winter holiday activity, we're going to acknowledge our volunteers so they give a reason to thank you for coming out, because that's one thing we want to do.
Another thought that comes to mind is that, we use sponsors, that is existing members, typically are the ones who will sponsor a new member. Even if that doesn't quite go well, once a new member joined the organization, we always make sure somebody else is reaching out to that person. So you always have the old and the new, however you want to call it. And we put the responsibility on the sponsor to make sure that the new member, if you want to call it that for the moment, that the member who may be slipping away a little bit to come back, find out what's going on, and making sure that we address whatever it is that caused them to kind of slip away, and invite them back and encourage them to come back.
Interesting. Do you find that your sponsors feel burdened with that, or are they energized and more engaged by being tasked with that outreach to new members, Jane?
Well, most of them, they become sponsored and nominated the new member in the first place. So there is already a relationship, a friendship relationship, or a collegial kind of relationship. And you know, they take a pride in bringing in new members. And so they won't want to lose them. I think that's the final motivation, other than just simply kind of a person to person caring kind of a relationship that you just want to know what happened. You know, how come I haven't seen you for a while?
Sure. Sure, Matt, I want to, I know that you've done some things within the DC network to keep people in the loop, to give them a sense of belonging to the organization. And it may be different from what Gold Shield has done. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So we have a lot of new people kind of moving out to DC, and so we see a lot of new faces at our events. And sometimes they're just interested in coming out, playing for our sports teams, coming out to the bar, what have you.
Mm-hmm.
But other times they're eager to help and get involved. And so if we do kind of run into somebody who expresses interest in something, we try to bring that out of them and encourage them to put on an event of their own. And so, if, for instance, if we go on a hike somewhere and they're really into it, and then perhaps they might want to put on the next one or something like that. If they join our monthly board meeting and they kind of speak up during a certain moment, and we're talking about potential events that we want to do, we encourage them to kind of go with that, or a particular skill or background that they have that can help us out. So we're quick to kind of give them ownership of things, and make sure that we follow up with them and make sure that they have all the things that they need to kind of contribute in the way that they want to.
That's great. I'm really interested in structure and structural differences, and how do each of your organizations approach membership and membership engagement? So, for example, within the Order of the Golden Bruin, we have a membership committee, and their role is to outreach to new members, let them know about our meetings that are coming up, encourage them to get engaged, et cetera. And it's a subset. We have 5 members who volunteer to be a part of it. Matt, how about with DC Network? What's your membership structure, and and is there a structure to keep your members engaged through committees or whatnot?
Sure. Yeah. So we have 2 people on our board, and our board's all volunteer based. We have 2 people on our board that are really in charge of getting our events out there and keeping people in the loop on all the things that we do. We do 3 or 4 events per month. Like, we really do have a lot of things on our schedule. And so what that takes is a couple of people that are dedicated to, we have a newsletter that goes out every other week. So we make sure that all the things are on there to give people enough of a heads up of what's coming up. We also have a Facebook account and a page, a Twitter account, Instagram. And so we try to keep, a lot of posts on there, throwback Thursdays, things like that, just to kind of liven things up a little bit. And so we're really committed to, spreading the word about all of our events, because, somebody might not be on Facebook, but maybe they get the newsletter. And so we want to make sure that people are seeing all the things that we're doing.
That's great. Jane, how about you?
Well, we have a vice president of membership who kinds of coordinate the whole annual process of nominating and inviting new members in. She keeps, obviously, a list that would allow for sponsors and so on. So once she's finished with the nominations and the invitation, she then goes into an orientation of the new members, which the sponsors have to join as well at that orientation. So it's not just for the new members. Mm-hmm. And usually it happens before a monthly board meeting. And all the board meetings are open to not only board members, but members as well. The reason for that is so that the members can get an idea which board I want to be part of, and so on. So the orientation, and then what happened is we have a vice president for programming who always have to identify co-chairs for our 4 major events of the year, as well as to make sure that we have every other month we have board membership meetings, which are kind of informal, but we do business. Um, every one of them have to have at least 2 people to coordinate and make sure everything is fine, from getting refreshments to checking in, whatever it is. They always need a lot more help. So she recruits usually an older member and a newer member to co-chair these events, as well as if they're not quite ready for that, is, well, we could use extra people to check people in. And so they only come for the event and they just do that one little thing and so on. So that's how we keep the members working all the time.
Sounds like a lot of work. Nishan, you're responsible for membership for your organization. How do you uniquely approach both the attraction of new members and also their ongoing engagement from an organizational construct?
Okay, over the last year, year and a half, I think one thing that we focused a lot more is on our marketing campaign of integrating all our social media platforms, telling, we have a large Facebook group. In fact, we have a large Facebook group, and what we've done is to make sure that a part of our outreach to our members or potential members, even if they've not paid it, we consider them members, people that just come out to our events, by making sure we touch every alumni, UCLA affiliated African American student type group. So we make sure we do it because there's a lot of different Facebook groups that we notice that do that. So we make a concerted effort to make sure we post on our Facebook page. We also have done Instagram, but I think one of the big places that we've done is that make sure that we use our constant contact, which has over 3,000 contacts, to send out emails. And we've also worked with the Alumni Association to try to make sure we have, at least when we have our general body meetings, which are supposed to ideally quarterly, but we've only had one last year. I was new to the job, but working on sending that out through the Alumni Association so more people could find out about our events. And one thing that we've learned over the last year is that when we do ask to our membership base regarding students, our alumni respond quite fast.
Mm-hmm.
In 1 week, we were able to raise $5,000 for the on-campus student group, and we realized, wow, we didn't even try. We just sent out one email. And so One thing that we learned that, when we find ways to engage, the alumni are interested in meeting the students, so they want to help out. So we're trying to find new ways to make sure that can happen all the time.
One of the interesting phenomenons for organizations in more or less based in the Los Angeles area is just the diversity of opportunities to get engaged. There's a lot of things that are competing for time and attention for your members, your networks, and particularly when you're thinking about new members, often recent graduates. Nishan, how does the organization address that in any way? Meaning, do you do unique things that you think that other organizations in the area can't do that drive a level of engagement that's unique?
This year, we started to try to find a way because we want to make sure our Alumni Association continues to attract new members, is to focus on the graduates or the participants of the African graduation celebration. Mm-hmm. We gave all the people that were part of the graduation celebration, so it was almost 200 students, free memberships, so they could do that. And then we hosted a reception for them last summer for them to find out more about the Alumni Association. And as a result, we were able to get some of those students, our recent alums, to get involved in some of the other events later on. So the goal is to continue on to focus on getting them all involved. And that's the plan we plan to do again this year, is invite the recent alums to have a free membership for 1 year, saves them $25 or $20 to get them involved so we can have targeted events towards them. And one thing we're looking forward to is now that we have a better database system, is to be able to do direct targeting to those recent members. So we have an event that sometimes we have a party or a social event that we want to cater to a large base. One thing that we learned is that we have to have like different musical selections. So the goal is right about now is when we have those type of events to maybe have a younger DJ and one that attracts to the older under 35 and over 35 crowd, to make sure we can get a chance to blend in their unique needs of the people.
Oh, I love that. So, Nishan, you've talked about you've got different modes to outreach to new members, to gather new members. Jane, you talked about the nomination process that Gold Shield uses to attract new members. Matt, interesting from a regional perspective, how do you attract new members?
Yeah, so what we do is every year we'll have kind of a welcome to DC kind of event, and being in DC, it typically involves like walking around the mall or checking out museums or something to that effect, where we're kind of welcoming people that may have just moved to the area and are looking to connect, and so that's one way where we'll get a lot of people out for that. And then we can kind of let them know some of our other events that we do. Outside of that, we occasionally get emails from people that are looking for, things to do. They just moved in the area they want, and then the first thing they think about is, my alumni network and how I can get involved or things like that. And so we're really kind of on the lookout for that, and constantly, like I mentioned before, on social media, and just making sure that the word is out there, so that people that may just like type in like UCLA, DC or something, they might find us, right? And that could be a way that they can quickly see what we do and get involved that way and connect.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. When you're thinking about, if you're new to the DC area or any, new region of the country, making that home away from home for folks that have that same background is super important. So to me, it makes sense of how you communicate the value of the network for a regional group. Jane, for Gold Shield, how do you communicate the value of Gold Shield to new members?
I think we're very fortunate. We don't have to challenge that. Every single person that is part of Gold Shield are diehard Bruins. They may not all like football, they may not like all of the sports, but they're in either cultural things or whatever it is. So in many respects, we don't need to sell UCLA to them. The only thing that I think it's a challenge for us is how we could help them work with other alumni affiliates or affinity groups, so that we can kind of share resources and combine efforts or whatever it is. But other than that, we really don't have a challenge of keeping the Gold Shield members feeling good about UCLA.
Not a bad problem to have.
Right.
Nishan, how do you communicate the value of network membership to your perspective or new members?
So one thing that we're working on this right now is to talk about what we're trying to do now is focus on targeted events that's only members can go to. So if we have a special release for movies, instead of offering the Thurgood Marshall free release to anybody, goal is to target to only our members or possibly lifetime members. And so last year we had a special VIP celebration event with Common and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Angela Ray at UCLA. And since it had a limited capacity, we also allowed for the first wave of people to get information were our lifetime members, so we can make sure that we don't forget about them, and then everyone else. So before we can make sure that it sends the message that membership has its benefits. And so that's kind of the way we're moving on forward, is to actually have like different events, special guarantees for people that are actual dues paying members. Another thing that we're looking into right now is working with our job search program, where people could actually network to find out about jobs, and that'll have an opportunity for our database to say, upload your resume, you can connect to our job base, and we're working with an outside organization to help facilitate resume and career building activities for our members. So it's trying to give reason for members to participate. And I can't forget, for the lifetime members, we also give them a special cup that for their paying their membership cups. Since we are a volunteer organization, it takes we send out the cups every once a month it's supposed to happen, but it's been more like quarterly. And then our new members get a pin. And now with our new membership program, we're going to have digital membership cards so we can save money and never forget about people having like a membership card. So when they come to our events, they can just check in with our membership activities.
Now I'm super curious what the cup design is, because I think we'd all like to see. Do you have one handy?
I'm just
Not to
thought
put you on
about
the spot.
No, I don't have one. This is good. Actually, it's in my. Interesting enough, the box is still in my car. I'm transitioning to taking those things out. But it's a silver mug that has a UCLA Black Alumni logo on it.
Love it, love it. So next time we'll hold you to that. So I'm going to switch gears just a little bit. We've talked about all the great things that your networks are doing on how to attract and retain new members. Let's be a little bit vulnerable and talk about what you think your network could be doing better to attract and retain new members. Matt, let's start with you.
Sure. One of the challenges that we face is that our members, or our network, is, we're serving kind of the DC area, but also further out into Virginia and a little bit out into Maryland. And we tend to have a younger crowd in DC and downtown. And then we have some older members that have kind of settled out in the suburbs out into Virginia and Maryland. And so one of the challenges that we have is making sure that we're reaching our entire network. And so, we're really good at doing, networking and game watches and things that are taking place in DC, and that are metro accessible and all of these things. And we're really trying to push to continue to do more maybe family-oriented events that are further out outside of DC, that are easier for others to get to. Also looking at time of day, day of week, things like that, ways that we can kind of make sure that everyone feels that they're involved and that they can get to our events.
Yeah, that's a challenge. I think, any regional organization in the Los Angeles area has the geography challenges of members and being able to get them. If you're on the west side, you're not going to go to downtown in the middle of the week. And I know in DC, you've got the same issues with suburban Virginia. Jane, how about Gold Shield? What do you, where do you think there might be some opportunities to attract and retain new members?
Well, our biggest challenge right now is as people are able to live longer, and as people also are able to achieve earlier, we really have a wide range of ages. And so I call it an intergenerational challenge of communication. Most of us now are moving away from print to electronics.
Yeah.
Well, you cannot get the 80-year-old to do that. And yet they want to be in touch. They want to be informed, and they have every right to expect that from us. So, how do you teach them to do certain things so they can be really on top of it? And we look to the younger generation members to teach the older generation. So, for example, now we have a closed group Go Shield Facebook group, and we put a lot of things in there. Any member can, just like any other Facebook, you could, if you're part of the group, you could put anything in there. And we find that very, very helpful for the ones who are less mobile or live out of state even, or whatever it is. But sometimes it takes a lot of patience to help them how to do that. And that's our challenge. But our younger members, who obviously are so much better at this stuff, are very patient and willing to do that. For example, we had one older member who took an hour on the phone with a younger member to set up her Go Shield closed group Facebook page.
Okay.
So, but we're getting there.
We're getting there. No, that's great. That's great. Members helping members is always a great way to engage folks. Nishan, where do you think Black Alumni Network could do better around retaining new members?
I think one of our biggest challenges is actually twofold. It's one, diversifying our membership base. One thing that we've learned is that there's becoming a generational gap between the active members and the current members. So the goal, that's why we've had a little focus on some of the low cost, no cost, fun type events to target to bring them in. And that's one thing that that's a challenge. And one thing that we're also looking to is establishing regional chapters for our association in the different areas, such as we just recently established the Bay Area chapter because there are people that Black alumni that live in different places that would like to create their own Black Alumni Association in that area. So our goal is to roll out chapters in the different areas, some of the major metro. In particular, while we have here is the next target is like San Diego and the Inland Empire because of the traffic concern. Everybody's not coming to the West Side or LA for different events. So our goal is to try to find a way to create different spaces or touch points for people to be involved with the Alumni Association. And then one other challenge we have is leadership consistency. And I think one thing people often say is that sometimes they hear there's a period of time where we hear a lot of stuff going on with the association and then they fall off. So the goal is to try to make sure we're bringing in new volunteers so they don't feel like they're overwhelmed with work, so that there's always some passing the baton once you get tired or moved up the ranks and say, okay, I've done this part, I'm going to move on to another section just to sit back and focus on raising money for the Alumni Association. So the goal is to create a good leadership cycle of new members. I guess that's why I'm here, because one of the board members found out I moved back to Southern California and was like, you need to get involved. And so now
I think many of us on this webinar have been a part of that conversation before. And thank you for your volunteer work. Matt, when I look at, and because of Nishan, it made me think about the board and board challenges around member engagement. Have you seen any interesting stories you could share around how you engage your board around membership engagement?
Sure. So, our network, we're not, paying to be part of the regional network, and so really a lot of that comes down to just putting out good events and getting feedback from them on what they'd like to do. But focusing on the board itself, we recognize that this is a volunteer opportunity for everyone, and so really we try to give everyone roles that they can kind of manage in terms of their job and their other extracurricular activities that they do. So we understand that, and so one particular challenge that we have is constantly juggling. When people are out of town and or they might be really slammed at work or things like that, and so we have a larger board where we kind of split up positions. So we have two people that are in charge of communications. We have multiple people that go to just various meetings with our Pac-12 network, our UC network, and things like that, so that they kind of split it up, and so it's very manageable, and they don't feel like they're too pressured to take on too much. So that's mostly what we try to do, is just pay attention to where they're at and what they can take on, and then shift things around if necessary.
That's great. And thank you all for sharing. We're going to pivot now, and I'm going to start asking you some of the questions that are coming from our participants on the webinar. So our first question comes from Terse Words. The question is, if you've ever left a group, what could they have done to retain you? Nishan, how about you? If you ever left a group, is there anything that could have been done to keep you as an active member?
I guess I would be honest, being involved with the Black Alumni Association. I think I kind of fell off because I didn't feel like it wasn't relevant when I moved away from the Los Angeles area. So that's one thing. I think that's why I'm probably more personable about creating UCLA Black Alumni chapters. One thing, because I learned there's a lot of Black alumni or UCLA alum in the different areas, and finding new ways to engage people would probably help extend our band so members could stay involved. Because After graduating from law school, I lived in Arizona, Virginia, and in the Oakland Bay Area, and I got involved with the alumni UCLA alumni networks in all 2 of the 3 areas. And I have to say, I lived 180 miles away from DC, but I always made sure I got a chance to go up to the DC Bruins network just to engage, because I wanted to watch football games and get into the city and find out what's going on. It was great to hear about. So that's one reason I think, finding different ways to get people active outside of like just raising money, because I hate selling chicken dinners for fundraising. That gets boring, and that's not something that I'm good at. And then for the more recent alum, they're not financially in the place to just sell and fundraise. So it's always good to think about different places to find your alumni to get involved.
Yep. And it's constant review, constant dialogue around that. Jane, I'm going to ask you the second user question. Emily wants to know, for smaller or newer alumni networks, what are the top 3 priorities that we should focus on to build our engagement?
I think the very first is to allow any of the members who show an interest in taking leadership to find a leadership role for them almost immediately. Even though, it's not the president or you don't have a formal title for the job. Give them the chance to lead when they can. Give them the chance to contribute based on what they think they can contribute, rather than what you want them to do. I think that's just critical. And the other thing is very fundamental. I don't know if you folks have gone to meetings, and understandably so. You haven't seen your buddies for a while, so you tend to go to your buddies and you guys are visiting, and there will always be a couple of people kind of on the peripheral, seemingly lost. We should never allow that to occur in an organization, especially in a smaller organization. I hope that helps.
That's great. Yeah. That's great. How about you in the DC network? What are 2 or 3 priorities around building engagement that you would encourage?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, there's a ton of Bruins in the area, like in most places. And so it's really just making sure that they they know that you exist, that they know that they're interested in what you're doing and what events you're doing. So kind of listening to them and really making sure that we're kind of matching what they're interested in. We like to do surveys often, and so that's a great way to get feedback. The survey goes out, it shows that we care, that we're listening, and then we get a lot of great ideas that come out of that. So so that's some of the ways that we try to engage.
So just being in touch.
Another way of thinking about it is you want to have your new members feel like they have a niche in your organization. It's the same thing when we went to school. The first thing that UCLA is impersonal and all of that. And how do you manage that? You help each student to find a place where they feel like they are part of.
I love that message, Jane. The third message, our question, actually is specifically for you, Nishan. Soleil Delgadillo wants to know, can you go into more detail about creating different chapters in different areas for your alumni network?
Okay, so can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't for sure. One thing that we did was there have been a conversation about people that were interested in starting their chapter. So what we did was fill an informal survey on our Facebook page to identify people that were interested in starting their own chapter. And as a result, in the Bay Area, they had the fastest response, about 5 to 10 people. And one thing that over the time, since it would be a structural change to our organization, we had to think about having a conversation. How does that affect the rest of the organization, and whether we could be able to we have some structural changes, like you have to change the bylaws and that nature. So that was the first target of saying, how many people does it require? Do they have a special questions about whether they have a special membership dues piece, or how do we encourage them? And how we resolve those questions, we're like, we'll allow the chapter to have after maybe a year of working together to see if it's worthy of giving them a chapter, like there's some interest. So they have over about 35 people in the Bay Area that were interested about joining, and they would pay the same dues to our organization, but we would send money back to that chapter so they could be able to run their own events. So they've had a happy hour, and their goal is to actually hopefully help our fundraising arm of raising scholarship money. So tapping into the Bay Area market of the .com and Silicon Valley to see if there are places to raise money for capital for our scholarships. So we're just looking at various ways to avenues to get them involved in like allowing them to do whatever kind of do what they like to do or what they think their members want to do to get involved with UCLA. Because the long-term goal is to actually have once you have a large chapters, have a very big annual event that brings all the chapters to campus to celebrate their achievements. So that's kind of the long-term goal.
That's great. I mean, it adds an extra layer of complexity, but you're really where the members are, which is one of the things that we encourage all of our networks to do, is really be both physically and psychologically where your members are from a partnership and services perspective. So thanks for sharing that. That was great detail. If you have questions, please do add it to the chat board. Our next question, and direct this one to you. Mighty James wants to know, does your group discuss new member retention at the board level?
I'm sorry, was that to me?
Yeah.
It got kind of cut off there. Yes.
No problem.
Sorry about that. We're constantly discussing member retention, and that's a constant like conversation at our board meetings. I mentioned we do surveys often, probably about once a year, where we're trying to get feedback from our network, but we're also really data heavy on checking out feedback from our board. So we kind of rotate on who is point of contact for events, and we like to know how did it go. And so we'll have a form that everyone will fill out after they host an event. They'll say what went well, what can be improved in the future, because all of these things are going to be a component in the experience of our network. And the better our events, and that's a key part of keeping people coming back in the future. And so we're constantly talking about that. What types of events, where do we charge, do we not? So these are all things that are top of mind constantly, and it's a challenge, but we feel like we're well positioned to hear what our members want and to try to match that.
I love that. That communication's everything. Jane, for you, I think about the very important goals that Gold Shield has. It's the scholarship work that you and the organization does is so important to the overall UCLA ecosystem. How do you keep your new members informed about the progress that Gold Shield's making towards its annual goals around fundraising?
Well, first of all, I told you that we have every other month we have board membership meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And for that, we always have a foundation report that is our Gold Shield. We put our scholarship money at the foundation, so they know exactly how much we have and don't have and how much we're spending. So that's one way that they know about it on an ongoing basis. But then every year, as you know, in the spring, late spring, we have the scholarship awards as part of the Alumni Association. And we very much get involved in that. We ask for I think usually we have about 4 or 5 of us at the national final assessment. And that gets reported. Then at that time, we work with the Alumni Scholars Committee to identify X number of members, scholars that will be called Gold Shield Scholars. So those Gold Shield Scholars, the first thing in the fall when we have our first major event, gets introduced and And we also invite all of the other ongoing scholars to come as well. They get to talk with each other. But you see, every one of them have a mentor who is a Go Shield member, volunteer member. And so that's how we know. And we have activities together. And then in the spring, we celebrate those scholars who are about to graduate. And rather than just say, oh, this is so and so and so and so and so and so majoring or whatever it is, we usually pick out a couple, three usually, uh, scholars who have had unusual kinds of background to even come to UCLA and how they have achieved and where they're going next. That is just so inspirational
It is.
for our members who will, write the check right there for another donation for the scholarship, because they know the money is well spent.
And Nishan, you mentioned a very similar dynamic with Black alumni is when you've got a good story, when you've got a good ask, you get a lot of engagement from members across the board. I'll pivot just a little, and I have to be cognizant of my role on the board. But Nishan, how can the Alumni Association help your network in your efforts around marketing and membership?
I think one way the Alumni Association has helped is by providing us with the contact list from Target with your alumni, with David, and I'm drawing a blank right now. I feel bad if she's watching. I can't sometimes. But they also make sure that we inform us about when the mail outs, but also making sure that we send out through their own targeted mailing list to say, hey, this is people that are affiliated with the university that may have like an affinity connection to our alumni association. So they've did that over the time, and that's been able to increase our contact base with our members. And I think that's how the Alumni Association has helped us out. And I guess the only other way would be to say, hey, could you just give us the list? But I know there's a concern because people didn't give you the information to give it to you, because that'll be another lawsuit. We don't do that. But
it could happen. Matt, how about you? Anything that the Alumni Association could do to help your efforts?
Yeah, I mean, I think I already bug Monica, our regional rep, constantly asking her questions on, kind of weighing in on our events. Should the newsletter go out this week, or should we wait till next week? Or like, do you think this type of event will be good with our network? She's really helpful in because she helps with other regional networks, and so they have similar issues that we face, and so that is a great resource to have. I've also reached out to her in the past when there is a traveling Bruin, maybe a professor or an athlete on a team that's in town, and we're trying to schedule events, because that's always a great pull for our network. And so really, like, it's such a good resource to have, so far away out here on the East Coast to connect, to see what they think in ways that, something I'm not thinking about, to connect with people around here. So
I love that. It's no secret that we have the best alumni staff in the country. And they do fantastic things to help us and grow our network across the globe. All right, we're about to wrap up, but I'm going to leave each of you with an opportunity to provide sort of last thoughts around your insights, or any last thoughts you had around keeping members engaged. We've talked about a lot of things, from the programs to the structure to outreach to communications. If you were to give a new leader of an alumni network some advice about how to engage their new members, what would it be? And let's start with Matt.
Sure. My advice is really just to get an idea of what people like to do, what excites them, what type of events they like to do, how they like to connect, and really kind of let them run with it. And so it could be a board member, it could be just somebody in the broader network, just a member in general, that they have ideas, listen to them, and that's how you make things better and you get people excited.
Fantastic. Nishan?
I would have to piggyback off of what Matt said, identify things that excite you. about being a Bruin, and that's one thing that has made, I think, an engaging students and alumni about joining UBAA. And I can't close without saying, be on the lookout for UCLA homecoming. We're going to have a homecoming activities from the 18th through the 21st to encourage people to come back to UCLA and get revitalize that Bruin spirit.
Fantastic. Love it. Jane?
Well, I think if I have to use one word, I would say inclusiveness. Do anything and be creative and not get stuck with tradition, and be flexible. But the key is to make people feel included.
Great advice from all of you. Thank you so much to all of our panelists for taking the time and your thoughtful feedback on how to keep your new members engaged. Thank you to our audience for participating live, those of you watching us on replay. I just want to remind everyone that this webinar will be taped and available on the UCLA Alumni YouTube channel. So you can share it with your fellow board members, your membership committee, et cetera, so that they can get some insights on how to keep new members engaged. And as always, thank you for all of your efforts as a volunteer here with UCLA and the Alumni Association. Have a wonderful week, and go Bruins.